Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Professor Walsh, and I'm here to deliver a pre recorded lecture. This is week two, Cinematography 1, and the topic this afternoon is role models in cinematography. And specifically, I want to direct your attention to four individuals who are actively uh, participating in the industry currently. And they are individuals that I think are um, at the forefront of the craft. Certainly, they are award winning cinematographers. We have individuals who have been nominated multiple times for the Academy Award for cinematography. We have an individual who has won consecutive back to back awards. And we have what I think are some exemplary um, bodies of work. So, without too much introduction here, I want to open up this afternoon's discussion with who is the cinematographer, and then show you some role models that I think would be, excellent examples of professionals who you might consider studying more closely, checking out their work. You may find their creativity inspiring. You may find their workflows inspiring. Um, and they'll certainly give you your first taste of working professional cinematographers, what they're up to, the kinds of tools that they're using, and so forth. So, I want to start off today. I like these old vintage photographs because um, not only are they interesting and they're, in most cases, royalty free, but they also sort of evoke emotion, at least within me, in terms of the faces of the folks who have gone before. And so the idea that, cinematography at this point is, gosh, it's over 100 years old at this point. The craft of cinematography, the art form of cinema, has been going on now since, with vigor and with progress, since the 1880s. So I like these old photographs just to sort of reinforce the idea that we're on a long timeline here, and that the cinematography that we know and understand today uh, stands on the shoulders of a lot of individuals who laid the groundwork, uh, did the testing, did the vetting, worked with the materials in its rudimentary early days, and perfected the craft both intellectually and as influencers to the peripheral industries, the manufacturers and the suppliers who work with the film industry to give us better and better tools every year, better and better cameras, uh, cleaner and sharper lenses with each successive generation of filmmakers, and all of the creative focus and expectations that have been sort of embedded in our craft are the product of a long line of people who have worked very hard and given their creative efforts and given their all really to the industry. So I applaud them, and I love just sort of paying tribute to them once in a while with these images. So, like I said, we are Cinematography 1. This is FIL2461. We're the spring of 2021 at this point. And I'm not going to do this too much longer throughout the course of the semester, but here are some of the pertinent dates. Now, we've passed a couple of these landmarks already. Your financial aid assignments should have been completed already. Classes began last week. Your ad drop deadline was Friday of last week. And so I'm assuming at this point that everybody who is currently participating in the class is meant to be there and intends to see it through to its conclusion. There is a withdrawal deadline, though. If for some reason you're not doing well by March 26th of this semester, you can withdrawal from the course. And then, of course, the last course day is April 26th, with a subsequent final exam a day or two after that. Some of the marquee dates at this point: you'll have a midterm somewhere around February 25th. This lecture is in the context of section 0001, but if you are in class section 0003 for some reason and you're watching this video, your midterm dates and so forth might be a little bit different. Your final exam and your midterms, certainly. Today is actually Martin Luther King Day. Today is January 18th, so I would like to extend my happy holidays to everyone on this Martin Luther King Day. Enjoy the moment, enjoy the break, and we'll get back together again with live Zoom sessions starting again on Tuesday of this week, and then, of course, for section 0001, we'll meet again on the following Monday. Once again, for those of you who may not have been in class last week while you were still sorting out your participation, I wanted to point out the operational portal to everyone. It is a feature of the UCF Film Department, which I think is pretty handy, and it has a number of features that you might be interested in. I've got an active link down here. If I pop over to the actual portal for a minute, I can show you some of the aspects of what's going on. So this is your UCF Film Department webpage, essentially. The information that you may want to know or need to know for certain projects or upcoming events can all be found here. So in the equipment tab, you can see there's a full list of their entire inventory of equipment that is available through the film equipment room in Nicholson, in the Nicholson building. At some point when you start doing your actual production classes, you'll be able to go down there, for instance, and check out cameras. And if you wanted to know what kind of cameras they have, of course, their full inventory is listed here. And not only do they rent these cameras out, but they can also provide qualifying training classes on that equipment, as well as video tutorials, which all appear under the training tab. So if you're looking for training videos, those are here. Workshops, when the next ones are scheduled, and the ability to sign up is under this tab, and so forth. Facilities is talking to you about what equipment is positioned where within the UCF university in its totality. The bulk of the equipment is on the main campus at the Nicholson School of Communication. However, there are certain assets that are located at the video gaming department downtown, as well as the computer labs. But the bulk of the gear, the stuff you're going to be concerned with here, is predominantly available through the Nicholson School of Communication. Like I said, upcoming events, we've got the production meet and greet. Those happen a couple times a year. If you were to click on that tab, for instance, it will tell you when the next one is scheduled, and it should give you information on how to sign up. So this is a good resource. Get to know it. It is, it's always up online, operationalportal.com, and this is for you. Like I said, this is the UCF Film Department website. So this is an asset that's here for you. Take advantage of it. You may find it handy at some point when you start actually producing your films here in the department. I also want to direct you really quickly to the modules page. So we are now fully in week 2, so that we're in section 1.2. We're going to study a few contemporary role models, some cinematographers. So we're going to have a lead page here in web courses talking about some of the stuff going on in the lecture today. And then, of course, as I speed through the module, here's where I'm going to put your lecture video. That's the video we're recording right now, and I will post that here as an active link. as well as on the next page, any of the videos that are pertinent that are also from the lecture are posted here, so you can go back and watch those videos again. I'll play portions of them in the lecture itself, but since I'm recording my screen, sometimes the quality isn't as good, and you might want to see firsthand the images or hear the best possible audio by virtue of the YouTube link. So I've put those there for you. The reading assignment will come this week from your textbook, Introduction to Cinematography. This is the Hosier book. Again, hopefully those of you who are staying with the class and don't intend on dropping or swapping have gone to the Amazon link at this point and purchased your rental for the semester. If not, those links and that conversation is available in the announcements tab. You guys should be checking the announcements tab every week. In this particular assignment, I'm asking you to read Chapter 2A. There's an A and a B portion of Chapter 2. The first section is simply about the cinematographer and talking about his role in the camera department. You'll have a writing assignment this week. So as a consequence of this lecture and after I show you 4 professional examples from the industry, I'm going to ask you to then go out and do a little bit of your own research. So there are instructions on how to conduct this assignment, and they're downloadable here. I've got them embedded in the assignment tab itself. This is called the Cinematographer Spotlight. So the idea is you're going to research a cinematographer of your choice, and I have a list here called the Cinematography Directory, from which you can choose any one of a number of names. This list was generated from the ASC, the American Society of Cinematographers website. It's an active member directory, so you can download this document, for instance, and it's got a whole list of names of active members of the ASC who are currently shooting movies. And you can pick a name off of the list and do a little bit of online research. I think you'll be surprised at what some of these folks are doing. I'm quite certain that with a little bit of research, you're going to find that some of your favorite movies have been shot by the individuals on this list. Okay, perhaps even your most favorite movie has been shot by an individual on this list. So there's a number of them to choose from here. You know, if you don't know any of these names, if none of these are resonating with you in terms of recognition, take a shot in the dark. I don't think you're going to be disappointed with virtually any of the names on this list. You know, there are several, I can see names attached to several movies just by looking at this list from my own recollection. If you happen to be a young lady and you're looking for women cinematographers to look into, there's a number of those. Okay, here's my friend Nancy Schreiber is among the list here. You might also look for Amy, where is she? Let's look for her name here really quick. There she is. Amy Vincent is on the list. So, you know, be aware that there are options like that in here as well. If you are a person with specific ethnicity and you're looking for somebody who represents your ethnic focus, for instance, and if you can't tell for sure, like Tak Fujimoto is pretty easy to figure out where he's coming from. But if you are having trouble discerning who, for instance, might be representing the African American community, just give me a call and I can point those individuals out for you on the list. I know that I've had students in the past who were very concerned with following up on those types of storylines, and so any number of possibilities is possible here from this list, and I encourage you to check it out. The assignment itself also has some research documentation guidelines attached to it just for your own information. I've put on here just some helpful tips on how to conduct your research. So, I mean, I'm not asking you guys to do a term paper or anything like that. A little bit of online searching is going to take care of a lot of the need for this assignment. In fact, a good place to start, although I wouldn't base all of my research on IMDb or Wikipedia, but you can start in those two places and generally get a pretty good head start on where you should look for any additional information. If you look at the actual instructions, if you download those, there's 2 pages to the actual instructions. This is only page 1, but it's going to talk to you about the spirit of the assignment, how to prepare for it, what your submission should resemble, and then there are some questions to consider answering about your chosen cinematographer, and there's a couple on page 1, and there's about 4 more on page 2. Topics that you can address within the context of your assignment submission that will fulfill the assignment and hopefully give you a pretty good education on somebody that you've chosen off of the list. You might consider just thinking about your favorite movie, and then go to IMDb, find out who the cinematographer was for that particular film, and then do a little bit of digging. I think, like I said, you'll be pleasantly surprised, and this is a good way to introduce you to the movers and the shapers in the industry, and start getting a sense of who these folks are. It's pretty easy, and a lot of motion picture directors are household names, and so you can think about guys like Steven Spielberg, and their name just rolls off the tongue. Your awareness of that particular individual is heavily steeped in current events and media, so it's easy sometimes to pick a director to write a term paper about. Cinematographers are a little bit less known, and so my point here with this assignment is to start creating awareness. So start looking for these individuals specifically and see how they're affecting the industry. Okay, if I get back to the presentation here, what I'm covering today basically are a couple of cinematographers. I've got Roger Deakins here lined up, Emmanuel Lubetsky, Christopher Doyle, and Seamus McGarvey specifically. And I'm just going to talk about who they are a little bit, and I'll show you a little bit on who they are, their bios. If they have a website, we'll take a quick look at it, and then I have their show reels here for you to take a look at as well, so you can see what their work looks like. And then there's a reading assignment for next week. Like I said, Chapter 2A in the Intro to Cinematography book. And then that's it. So let's start with this little inspirational here. This is a neat little video. Some folks in the past have said maybe it's a little bit overly dramatic, but I think it gives you a good sense of the spirit of being a cinematographer and what that means to this particular individual. So let's take a look at this really quick.
What does it mean to be a cinematographer? Is it something more than simply positioning a camera, lighting a couple of frames? What I feel when I walk on set goes far beyond that. Setting up the lights, framing the actors. Before I walk on set, there's only darkness. Everything lacks meaning. Before I walk on set, there are just words in an actor's head. Painted walls with hanging curtains, like the world before God conceived it. When the light falls into place, the most ordinary things seem to shine, and your images shine with them. When the camera finds its place, everything else slots in. But before the light rests, before it filters through the lens, I've got to go on set and face the nothingness, see the world before it existed. That moment, when I go on set, nothing's changed, but at the same time, everything's different. Knowledge and technology don't mean anything without the gift of seeing what others don't. I can have cameras that are better than the human eye, lights more powerful than the sun, but my job is to be able to see in the dark. empty set and give it meaning. At that moment, you realize that you were made to be here. That you were made to be a cinematographer.
Okay, so that's being a cinematographer. There's a really funny um, spoof of this video on YouTube, and it kind of pokes fun at the individual who's the focus of this particular video, and sort of, you know, pokes fun at sort of the dramatic overtones that are here. And certainly we don't want to give anybody a god complex. If you're studying to be a cinematographer, I mean, understand, that this is a collaborative effort, and the cinematographer is mostly a coordinator of assets, resources, and individuals who are all contributing their creative efforts and their labor to the manufacture of a motion picture. So it's not an exclusive role. The creativity isn't exclusively to the credit of the cinematographer. He certainly is, or he or she, for that matter, certainly is, directing the efforts of the image. That's why we call them often directors of photography as opposed to cinematographers. I think cinematographer is more specific to the art discipline of cinema, and photography, by virtue of its one frame at a time paradigm, is similar, but I think cinematography has more layers of intrinsic meaning and modality, which make it unique among other art forms, notably the ability to move the frame by moving the camera and offering unveiling and evolving perspectives of an image as the camera lens moves through a scene or across a landscape. I think all those things make cinematography fairly unique. And therefore, the cinematographer is a unique form of a creative in that they have almost they have a three-dimensional awareness and understanding of their discipline that a painter or a photographer or someone working in tangible medium might not possess. So I think it's a unique position, and it warrants our investigation more closely. I'm going to throw in a lot of little quotes and stuff in these slides over the course of the semester. This one happens to be by Tarkovsky, and he's talking about cinema as a very difficult and serious art, and it requires sacrificing. It requires dedication. You should belong to it, he says, and it shouldn't belong to you. In other words, technology and the modalities or the traditions of cinematography are guidelines, and they shouldn't be dogmatic restrictions. They should help you arrive at creative decisions of expression, self-expression, or collaborative expression. The director, the executive producer, the cinematographer, they're all sort of combining their understanding of the cumulative vision and expressing that with the tools at their disposal. So one of the folks that I like to point out, and this is for the ladies in the audience, this is my friend Nancy Schreiber. So Nancy is a working cinematographer in Hollywood. She started her career a lot like I started mine, although I started in the camera department, left it, and then returned to it after a long journey through the different crafts responsible for making films. Nancy started in the lighting department, lighting and grip in New York City, and she worked as a technician behind the camera in what was at the time a predominantly male focused industry. And she did it successfully, and she did it over a long period of time. So Nancy's career has got to be pressing the boundaries of 40 years by now, given that my on-set career lasted the better part of 28. So, she's still out there. She's still in the field doing it. She's transitioning into academia as well. But I've done a number of pictures with her, and I find her to be one of the most talented people out there who subscribe to the craft and who share the title cinematographer. She was an inspiration to me when I worked for her, because any cinematographer who came from the lighting discipline the way I did, I find to be of common mind and common focus in terms of the priorities invested in an image. It's not all about the camera all the time. The camera is a tool, just like a light is a tool. And the most, the best images are the passionate expression of the cinematographer, the individual, and how they use their tools. So having the best camera in the industry or the best camera available does not make you a good cinematographer. Having a truck full of lighting and grip equipment does not make you a good cinematographer. Rather, what you do with those tools is really the only real gauge that we have. What's the focus and the voice of your work? What do your images look like? Given that question, let's ask then, what is a cinematic image? Okay, I think we know, because we're bombarded with media all the time, what's a good image? What's a good photograph? And a lot of people could give you an answer. Some of them might answer topically. Some of them might answer with regard to subject matter. Some people might answer that with regard to, color or black and white. Electronic origination or actual images shot on film. Whatever your niche interests are, I think the cinematic image is more of an approach to creating an image than it has much to do with the medium itself or the media that you choose to work with. It's really about the creative constraints or the creative guidelines that you use to build your images that make them cinematic, more so than specific types of shots or specific subjects. So let's hear a little bit of that. This is from Cook Optics Television. We'll see what some cinematographers have to say about what the cinematic image is.
A cinematic image to me is...
I'm not going to tell you precisely what it is.
It's a combination, basically, of a lot of factors.
The first thing is a desire.
So that doesn't stick to reality at all.
So it's all sorts of angles of approach.
Is what you say it is.
I don't know. There isn't any answer.
And that's what makes a cinematic image.
What desire do you have to create this image, okay? It's what do you have in your mind, what your imagination creates before arriving on the set.
As an audience, you're sitting in the cinema, and the film moves you.
For me, it's a structure of all the parameters and the way you control it, and starting with the lens. I can't imagine arriving on a project without having decided about the lens. If I don't know which lens I'm going to use, which prime lens I'm going to use, I will be terribly lost.
But I think that what's interesting, and again in the past 4 or 5 years, is that the technology that people get to use on TV and to get to use in feature films is actually exactly the same stuff. So the same cameras, the same sensor size, the same lenses, all of those things are now available, which I think is brilliant.
Well, I don't think there is a cinematic look. I mean, you just have to look at the range of films that one can see out there, and, especially now, shot on so many different cameras. Some are even shot on iPhones or on a Lexus 65.
It is the story, for sure. 80% of the film is the story. But the way it's told is what tops it up. It can be more effective if it's more if it's shot the right way.
I would say that's very much dependent on what's going on in the shot. you know, the frame, you're capturing the acting, what's been staged. You're in there with the director, looking at it, analysing how it's going to be covered, how it's going to be photographed, whether one angle is enough to capture it, either static or with the camera moving. Are you going to shoot the scene in a number of cuts? Now that's really it. That is really it.
What makes it cinematic is when the choices you make click together well with the story.
There is an argument to say it is what you say it is. It is how you present it. I'm not sure. I think it's just the sort of sensibility, really. How you decide you want to tell a story, and you get that story in the most immediate way that you can. It's I think it's what you say it is, really.
But in a way, it's where you put the camera that's very important, and that's what makes a cinematic image, is where you place that camera.
A cinematic image to me is something that's not contrived, something that is subtle, and something that's been thought through. It's not just a close-up, and it's not just a closer.
I would say a cinematic look is a look that doesn't stick to reality, but doesn't go further, that you don't notice more than the story or the script. It's a sculpted image with deep blacks and a high contrast, and on which you can find, again, quite a big gap between the warm light and the cool light, so that doesn't stick to reality at all, which is still justified according to the script.
It's a combination basically of a lot of factors. It can be the time of day, it can come from the script. If you're shooting a feature, it should definitely come from the script. If you're shooting a commercial, it's all about the style, it's all about the look. It certainly comes from the lenses. The lenses basically are the brushes. The lights are also part of the style as well. I think for me, lighting is probably everything. Lighting is more important than probably almost anything else, because you can do so much with it. And finally, the style comes from camera movement, composition, set design, backgrounds, wardrobe, what the actor is wearing. Sometimes I think we're not so much in the film business, we're really in the fashion and style business, aren't we? Creating a mood, trying to convey an emotion.
I think I have no answer to that, because the hardest thing when you begin to work on a movie is to find your place in the director's brain. And I think if the directors have cinematic idea, for technician is not a problem to make cinematic images. There's as many definition as directors. Each good director is a new cinematic direction.
It's taking backgrounds into relation, it's taking a foreground into relation, and it's taking a subject within that picture, encompassing everything. Where the light's kicking off, what can I shoot through, how can I slide off, and what the background's doing, what the focal length is doing with the background lights.
I don't know. You know what? I've never knew that. I read it all the time on a commercial pitch, and they say we wanted to make it look cinematic. And I wanted to ask the same question. I don't know. There isn't any answer. I think you should. One should do the story how they see it in the best way, and give it the space.
I'm going to stop the video there because I love that answer. I mean, they're all giving good answers, right? And one of the takeaways from watching this video that the majority of my students always have is, well, why is everybody giving a different answer and nobody's giving a firm and pat answer as to what a cinematic image is? And I think that is the whole point of the question and the whole point of this video, which is cinematography is highly subjective, and it has to do with the individual behind the camera and their collaborations with the director. So all of these answers in a way are correct, and all of these answers in a way are equally far from an accurate definition, by virtue of the fact that cinematography is an evolving craft that is subjective. So, while it can incorporate tools like cameras and lenses, and it can involve disciplines like lighting and camera movement. It also has to do with the story itself and what your audience's expectations of those images might be. And so the subject is open broadly to interpretation, which I think is it can be frustrating or daunting at times because you don't have a fixed answer as to what you should be doing. But on the other hand, it gives you the ultimate in flexibility and freedom to define those terms on your own on a case-by-case basis. I think if we were to try and classify cinema as an art form, the things, to me, in my opinion, that are the most distinctive about cinematography would be the use of interpretive lighting. Lighting, in other words, that can express themes involved in the story that dialogue or visuals themselves, specifically like framing or composition, don't fully explain. And the fact that art is a repetitive process based on a method, and the method is born of inspiration, experimentation, trial and error, perfection over time, repetition, and the ability to repeat the process at will on a case-by-case basis. I think that's how we could define almost any art form, really. So the media that you use and the way that you go about it may or may not really have much to do with the definitions that we assign to art, for instance. So there's a little bit more to this video. It's about 11 minutes fully. I showed you a little less than half. If you want to follow through with the rest of the video, it is embedded in web courses for you to check out later. There's another video from Cook Optics that I wanted to bring to your attention today, and that is, what is the role of the cinematographer? So we're asking ourselves some very key questions today. What is cinematography? What makes it different from videography or photography? And then who's doing it, and what is their job description specifically, and what type of person is this cinematographer? So we're taking a look at some pretty broad strokes today, and hopefully that's going to get you thinking. And then I want you to apply your questions that are now hopefully coming to your mind. Apply those questions to a specific individual and give me a short report on that. Let's take a look at what the role of the cinematographer might be, or how it might be defined.
In its driest, most literal sense, I mean, obviously the DP is is the head of the camera department and liaises with the head of the lighting department in order to control the photography of the film, the lighting, the framing, and the camera work, and ultimately using that control of photography to tell and enhance the story.
The director of photography, sometimes people feel all he does is the photography, but in fact there's a lot more you do. You get involved in the production, the choosing of locations, the best place to shoot things, the best time to shoot things, how to be efficient, how to be economic with equipment and with time.
DP's responsibility is to be true to the script, but also service the production in the right way. You don't order lights you don't need. You don't order lenses you don't need for that project.
There's so much more to the role than just lighting and camera composition or movement. As a head of department, you have to look after all your lighting and grip and camera people, which is a basic sort of leadership role. But the whole speed and momentum of the production is dependent on your speed.
Yes, you have to be able to do the job creatively and technically, but there's a lot more to it. People, I think when producers, for example, look at you, it's also about can they do the job in the time that we have? Are they fairly easy to get on with? Are they going to cause us trouble?
So you want to work well, work fast, hand the director the space, and having solved all the problems, then let the director, get the great performances out of the actors, and also have a relaxed environment for the actors, so the actors feel comfortable, they feel they're being looked after, they're being lit well, they're happy.
You've got to stop being a consumer in many ways, even in the way you work, and facilitate a project in the best way you can.
You're right.
Again, there's more to this video as well. I just want to give you a sampling of it here in the lecture, and you can follow up with the full video embedded in web courses. I think that among all of these cinematographers that were asked this particular question, I think Gavin Finney gave the best answer when he said, we solve all the issues of image as quickly and as efficiently and as creatively as we can with the time that is allotted to us based on the schedule. And then we turn the set over to the director so that the director can bring forth the actors and elicit the best responses from those actors within the context of the image and the framing that we have created or afforded to this moment. And so it kind of clearly defines the sort of the boundaries between director and cinematographer. There is an undercurrent or a philosophy in Hollywood that sort of was born out of I think it started emerging in the 60s with the after the French Renaissance of film and when the American film Renaissance was sort of underway, and that is a sense of authorship. In other words, the director is the creative driving force, the pinnacle of creativity in a movie, and therefore the director is responsible for everything creative and wonderful about the movies that we appreciate and patronize in the theaters. And I don't think that is a fair assessment of the process that involves so many people. And the fact that, or the notion that one individual could manage effectively and efficiently all of the disciplines and concerns that are reflected by crews that can number in the hundreds, I think is an absurd notion. I think that the directors over time have co-opted the sort of creative credit in its totality for a lot of these films. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some films I think that are that definitely bear the creative earmarks of specific individuals, specific directors, and their insistence on all aspects of control oftentimes produce amazing results. Michael Mann happens to be one of those directors. Steven Soderbergh is another one of those directors. Steven makes cinematography choices as well as directorial choices, as well as art direction choices on a lot of his films. And then he hires people to sort of see those objectives through to their creative conclusion, but he maintains control in a very patriarchal way that maybe other directors may not, and it doesn't mean that his motives and workflow are ideal or an industry best practice in any way. I think that when we practice an even distribution of responsibility and we allow creative people to contribute in the mode that they work best, I think that oftentimes is the most effective way to package a movie in terms of a group effort. In other words, if there's a director who thinks they know a lot about lenses and composition, only to find that their dailies are very boring and bland, and all the while they had an Academy Award-winning cinematographer sitting behind the camera simply doing what he was told instead of offering advice or asserting his position when he saw something visually impactful that could have been recorded, as opposed to a very sort of unimpressive result by an individual whose focus was torn in too many different directions. That's the danger, right? And so if you're a director, I think the branch that you roost on is the performance from the actors. So you're heavily steeped in rehearsals and subtext and performance. And you have to pay, in many cases, extensive attention to these individuals, because they are hungry or needy for information and encouragement and confirmation. They're bearing their hearts and performance on their sleeve. They're acting out for the camera in ways that are very emotionally demanding. And so to have a director who's only partially present in those moments when the actors really need them, I think it would be a disservice. So the best thing is, if you need a good editor, don't cut it yourself, even if you know that you can cut it. Give that responsibility to somebody who lives and breathes in the artistic performance of editing, and give that individual the job of cutting the movie, and simply be there as an inspiration and as a guide to let them know what your expectations are, but let them show you something. Hire qualified, talented cinematographers. They're going to show you what the emotional, thought-provoking, or compelling compositions are. Cinematography is certainly not pointing the lens at whatever we perceive as the point of interest and then pushing the record button. There are some very deliberate choices that are being made, and somebody who's keen to those specific criteria, the cinematographer, in other words, can be a very valuable collaborator to a director. Okay, so that's my point, I think, is that the disciplines should be sort of allocated amongst the individuals who function best in those disciplines. And then the director becomes a conductor of an orchestra, right? The conductor's not going to run around playing every instrument in the band and trying to convince you that, he's got a good handle on, Vivaldi's Four Seasons. He's going to hire a string section and a wind section and a percussion section, and a string section, and they're going to collaborate on that piece of music, and everybody's going to play their part and do their role. And as a result, the audience gets the benefit of a group effort, which is, I think, maybe the best way I can illustrate that to you here. This video, also from Cook Optics TV, is advice on how to get into the industry for cinematographers. I'll play a minute or so of this so you can get a sense of that. I think it's Jeff Boyle is predominantly featured in this interview, and he's definitely a certain type of personality. He's a great guy. I've talked to him outside of these courses and stuff, and he's a very passionate guy. But let's see what they got to say about how you can even go about getting in the industry in the first place.
People pass crew to each other. It's a very incestuous, it's a very closed environment, and people don't realize how closed it is. The thing that students and people starting off in the business don't realize is how closed it is. And also, they're never taught at university how difficult it is, because they all think they're going to get jobs. They all think they're going to be cinematographers. One, they need to be taught at college that the job they're going to get when they leave is making tea, not as a cinematographer, if they're lucky. And the fact is that the universities and colleges produce as many qualified students every year as work in the business. The entire number of people working in the industry is produced every year. Now, I'm not giving up my job for the people who graduate this year. So that's one that's not got a job. And I think you'll find that everyone else, in the industry isn't going to give up their job either. So the percentage that get through is tiny. And I was asked in front of 3 years of class by a head of a course what percentage I thought of his students would get through and have jobs in 5 years' time. And he was horrified that he'd asked the question, because I replied. And I said, 2% if they were lucky. And the students were, what? And he turned around and said, well, yes, Jeff works in the competitive world of commercials. John Record, who was BBC Drama, John, I'm sure you've got a different point of view. And he went, yeah, Jeff's being wildly optimistic. Be lucky if 1% of you have got a job. And students need to be told that. They need to be aware of that, and that it's hard, and that you have to be dedicated to it. I was asked recently, talking to students, I won't name the university, but I was saying to them that you've got to go to things like IBC, BVE, the BSC show. Okay, you've got to go to CineGear in Los Angeles. You've got to go to NAB. Well, we can't afford to do that. Stop partying. Still can't afford to do that. Steal something. Still can't afford to do that. Get down to Piccadilly and sell your ass. What? Do what you have to do. You have to do that. You have to learn about the new technology. You have to make contacts. Talk to manufacturers. Manufacturers are a great source of work and contacts for new people. I contacted them all when I came back to England back in 77. I came back to England from the Middle East. Because I was talking to the manufacturers, I would then get a call from them saying, we've got this show coming up. Will you demonstrate a camera for us?
Okay, so Jeff's being very tongue-in-cheek in his response to that question. I think it's kind of funny, but there's an element of truth in what he's saying. There's another 3 or 4 minutes to that video, but like I said, in the interest of time, I'm going to cut it short. He says you do what you have to do, right? Now he's talking about working as a cinematographer, and his level is he's fairly highly placed in the hierarchy of cinematographers within the industry, and of course, these individuals and their prestige or their place in the overall scheme of things. Feature cinematographers, in other words, the guys who shoot the movies that you pay $18 to go see at the theater, they are the upper echelons of the industry. And so if that's your goal, if you aspire to those heights, then yes, you have to be fully dedicated, and you have to be willing to do whatever is necessary for you to attain those heady heights in the industry. And they are extremely competitive. The competition and the backbiting at the studio level in Los Angeles, in particular, is very aggressive, and it's very stressful, and it can weigh heavily on you, and it can be very demanding of you. The fact that when you're working on feature films like that in Hollywood, your days to begin with are 14 to 15 hours long, especially with traffic. And if you're already working overtime on the job, then your commute to and from work just adds to the length of your day. And the notion that, there's no going home at 5 o'clock like everybody else on the 405 or the 10, sitting in traffic for a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then getting home, having dinner, and relaxing in front of the TV for a couple of hours before you go to bed, or playing with the kids or the dog or mowing the lawn. Your life is pretty much the job, and everything that happens outside of the job has to be very it's a compromise, right? And it has to be things have to be allocated very studiously in order to have anything of a personal life outside of the studio work that you do. And as a result of that, you become sort of out of touch with the day-to-day current events, and you can lose track of friends, and you can miss sometimes landmark family events. And so you have to weigh the costs of those sacrifices to working at the highest level in the industry, where the pay is amazing, the access is amazing, and the people and the places that you come in contact with are amazing. But it comes at a cost. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody working as a cinematographer is working at that level. So we have digital cinematography, we have videography, we have people that shoot for the web, people that shoot corporate media, people that shoot commercials, low budget, mid budget commercials, and so on and so on, and education. For that matter. So we have a number of different ways for individuals to practice the vocation of cinematography. But what Jeff is really talking about when he says, go to Piccadilly and sell your ass, is if you want to be the DP of Game of Thrones, yeah, you're probably going to have to sacrifice your relationship, a nice fancy house, and a really nice car to drive. You're gonna live in a small, seedy apartment where you're rarely going to be there. You're going to drive, a beater of a car that, is just functional enough to get you to and from work, but is not going to impress anyone on a date, for instance. You may not go on very many dates as a result. I can remember so many times as a young man working till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday nights and realizing that there wasn't going to be any weekend hanging out at the bars meeting girls because I was at work. And if I wanted to make that money and have access to those people and be creative and work in that industry full time, that I was going to have to make some sacrifices. So there's a lot of aspects to this job as cinematographer. And as a result of the things that I'm bringing to your attention now, I can say that, this is the kind of thing that you want to work up to. So you're going to want to enter the industry not as a cinematographer, for lack of experience and temperament. You're going to want to enter the industry maybe as a second assistant camera person. Or a focus puller, and then work that job for a while, see how it's done, meet the people that are working on the camera crews and working on films of all different shapes and sizes, and then work your way up through the ranks. And then eventually, when you're experienced enough and older and mature enough and willing to or able to make the required sacrifices, that you're truly in a position to do it. And then take the leap of faith and allow yourself to be tested. It's one hell of a rewarding career. And so there are some individuals now that I want to show you. And Roger Deakins, I think, is really at the top of a pretty short list for me of creative cinematographers in the industry that I think is a mover and a shaper. He influences his own contemporaries in terms of the work that he does. And this is a short reel here. If I open back up my my web courses for you, and if I go to the modules and show you for this section the videos from the lecture, here is oh, I guess I didn't. I have the links in here. Let's take a look. Let's go back to the video. The links are certainly available. I can get them too if you want to see the full reels from these guys. They're easy to find on YouTube. This is the films of Roger Deakins. He is English, so he is the member of the British Society of Cinematographers as well as the American Society of Cinematographers. And you might recognize some of his films. This is The Assassination of Jesse James, which came out about 12 years ago. Okay, so some of you might have recognized Fargo, Skyfall, No Country for Old Men, Sicario, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Roger has worked on many, not all, but most of the Coen brothers movies. So if you're a big fan of Joel and Ethan Coen, I'd say probably 8 out of 10 times those movies have been shot by Roger Deakins. He also shot the recent installment of Blade Runner 2049, and more recently the historical drama 1917. He won the Academy Award for that. And I think, if you haven't seen it, you should check out that film. Check out any of his films, really, and get a sense of how this person uses lighting and cameras to create these compelling images. This is another interesting individual. This is Emmanuel Lubetsky. He is affectionately known within the industry as El Chivo, which is Spanish for the goat. And those of you who are, for instance, football fans and Tom Brady fans, you've heard that moniker tossed around a lot lately. The GOAT, meaning the greatest of all time. Emmanuel Lubetsky, or Chivo, is a Mexican cinematographer, and he works with Alfonso Cuarón. He works with Iñárritu, and he's done a number of films, both independently and at the big budget level. Most notably, his awards recently for Gravity, Birdman, which is a wonderful explosion of color and camera movement, and The Revenant. He won back-to-back cinematography awards with the Academy. In other words, 3 consecutive Oscars, beginning with Gravity and then Birdman, and then culminating in The Revenant a couple of years back. So he's another one who, Children of Men, Tree of Life, he's got Lemony Snicket, A Series of Unfortunate Events. He's got a large repertoire. One of my favorites that he shot a number of years ago that I was asked to participate in, but I was already on a job at the time, was Great Expectations with Ethan Hawke. Beautiful movie, and I wish many times I wish that I had not turned him down at that time. But anyway, here's a little bit from Emmanuel's reel. So Chivo has a wonderful, whimsical, airy feel about his cinematography. You probably got a sense of that with a lot of the movement and crane work that he likes to do. He's also an international cinematographer, so he doesn't always shoot films in the United States, although he has sort of migrated here from other corners of the world. But remember, he started his career and reached critical acclaim in Mexico before he ever came to the United States. One of his first movies that I think was up for an Academy Award in those days was Y Tu Mama Tambien. So he's been at it for a while, and he brings some very interesting cultural and ethnic flavors to his expression that I think enhance and increase the value of cinematography as a whole. I find him particularly inspirational myself, and a number of the films that he has shot are among my very favorites. And the same can be said of this fellow here. This is Christopher Doyle. And he's, of all the cinematographers that I appreciate and frequently watch and consume his work, he is a lot like Caravaggio in a sense. He's a rogue. He's an Australian-born cinematographer who found more inspiration and expression by shifting his career from Australia to Hong Kong. And he has been a cinematographer on a number of movies out of China and particularly out of Hong Kong. And he's worked for notable directors like Wong Kar-wai. In the Mood for Love is one of his most notable films. He also shot Hero, which I think is an amazing and beautiful movie that incorporates all the legends of Chinese folklore with the expressions and uses of color and visual references and camera movement, sweeping camera movements that are just amazing. So let's take a brief look at what Chris has got to offer, and then I'll show you one more.
Reading through excerpts from Christopher Doyle's diary that he writes while shooting a film seems like unbridled chaos. It's so chaotic that it fills me with feelings of cinematic dread and paranoia. In his diary, he describes how things are constantly changing and going against him. He fights weather elements while shooting exteriors, describes shooting a film without a script, with little direction of where it's headed, and talks about shooting a large-scale fight scene at a World Heritage Site that can't be damaged. It appears so chaotic sometimes that all you can do is laugh. So what is to be done? Fight it? No, embrace the chaos. In this edition of Cinematography Style, I'm going to be analyzing and breaking down the cinematography of Christopher Doyle by looking at his work and drawing from his philosophy on creating images, as well as looking at the gear he chooses for his photography. Australian-born Christopher Doyle left his native country at 18 and embarked on many different odd jobs before making his debut on the Taiwanese feature That Day on the Beach with director Edward Yang. He moved to Hong Kong, where he became known for working with Chinese directors such as Wong Kar-wai, Stan Lai, and Chen Kaig. He is probably best known for his work with Wong Kar-wai, shooting most of his features such as Days of Being Wild, Ashes of Time, Chungking Express, Fallen Angels, Happy Together, and In the Mood for Love. Over the years, he has received many accolades for his diverse and lengthy filmography. So what does embracing chaos look like? Well, for Doyle, it seems to stem from his love for the story and the emotion behind the story. His cinematography is not always concerned with realism. How his images make you feel is more important than the illusion of reality. He loves texture, and it shows in his work. The films he shoots, especially in Hong Kong, have a grittiness to them. He likes to use foreground elements and shoot through them, creating a dirty frame. The images don't try to be too clean or polished. In his diary that he wrote during the production of Hero, he described his disdain for lack of texture on the set. Those who build our sets and finesse the spaces see my work as separate and unrelated to theirs. Just a little dirt would make such a difference. In my Hong Kong-based world, I'd be at these walls and pillars with a couple of spray cans right away, but that isn't done here. His lighting approach also embraces a certain amount of chaos. Mixed sources are all over his work. In Fallen Angels, for example, the motivation of his light comes from everywhere. A tungsten street lamp outside diffused by frosted glass, an overhead dirty fluorescent, a practical clock on the wall emitting light, a TV, signage outside the room. It all adds to this beautifully gritty world of underground Hong Kong. He likes to light directly, often not bothering to diffuse or bounce light to soften it. This creates highlights and reflections in the skin and hard shadows. Movement of the camera is crucial in his work. He makes the astute observation that the camera should only move when someone or some idea motivates it to. Although he's famous for his handheld work, it's not his only trick. Doyle approaches each film differently and finds a way of moving the camera that works for the visual language of the film he's shooting. A lot of his movement is rough around the edges, but I think this is because a lot of the emotion in the films he works on are rough around the edges too. Translating 3 dimensions into 2 seems easier through the movement that is basic to any film. The most important thing is to keep trying as free-handedly as possible, rather than imposing it through some formal system. But on some films such as Hero, he favors a lot of still frames, an approach motivated by a more precise, considered story. The same can be said for how he frames his shots. Often his frames are canted, distorted, or angled in an unusual manner, but they can likewise be centered and traditionally composed, depending on what the emotion of the scene requires.
I think one of the most poignant things that the narrator hits on in this particular clip is the notion that Doyle approaches his cinematography with an aesthetic that demands that the beauty and the emotional response from the audience is more meaningful to him than any rendition of reality. And so he's an interesting dichotomy, isn't he? Because he's using all these mixed light sources, for instance, within the context of a single frame. Sodium vapor outside the window, fluorescent light overhead, television screen, clock on the wall, and all of these different lighting sources that he's using to light the scene have different color temperatures and different exposure values and grittiness to them. And that random chaos that he's willing to accept is also in the best service of the images, which he hopes resonate with the audience, and that is his underlying objective, is to really connect with you as the audience and show you images that will get you emotionally involved or engaged with the story, and then allow the characters and their complexities to sort of draw us in. He's a really interesting guy, and he warrants further investigation for anyone who's interested in that sort of raw style that he is embracing. And lastly, I want to show you a little bit from Seamus McGarvey. Now, Seamus doesn't have a structured website, but he does a lot with academics, which is one of the reasons why I respect him so highly. He does a lot of how-to or topically focused films with Cook Optics TV, but he also does stuff. Here's one from the Global Cinematography Institute. He works with all of these different educational institutions to really create awareness and to create advocacy for the art of cinematography, to keep it fresh and to keep the interest going and to keep people involved and to draw in new people every year. So let's take a quick look at Seamus McGarvey. One of my favorite films that he shot. Some of you may have seen the film Atonement. Atonement is famous for the it's oh gosh, I think it's well over 5 minutes of continuous Steadicam of the scene of the troops on Dunkirk beach at the around the middle, 2/3 of the way through the Second World War. In fact, Christopher Nolan made a whole movie on that one particular event. But within the context of Atonement, there's a point where the characters have found themselves in that situation. And then, of course, one of the longest Steadicam walks along the beach in Dunkirk is absolutely stunning. So here is Seamus McGarvey.
Do you have any examples of a really improvised solution in your career? But something, okay, oops, let's just do it.
Yeah, and I love being prepared. I don't like being so prepared that you're fixed, you're in a straitjacket creatively. You know, Joe, for instance, does really storyboard every single shot in his movies, Joe Wright. But, you know, there are times when he kind of jumps out of that and says stuff. I mean, we did that a few times when we had to on Atonement because we were shooting in a stately home in the middle of the summer, but it was supposed to be all in the first part of the film takes place Monday, and it's the hottest day of the year. It's sunny, sunny, sunny. But every time you see an interior in that film, it was lit because it was pouring rain because, you know, what British summers are like. It's raining all the time. So when we got sporadic sunlight, we would suddenly go, okay, we're dashing outside and pull the lights around the back of the house. And we would shoot stuff with the most amazing sort of post-storm clouds, but with sunlight in the foreground. And it was unplanned, but our crew was so small and so athletic that we were able to do that very quickly. We were able to go, okay, pull that HMI around the back of the house, and away we go. And we did that for some of the really loveliest shots, I think, of the film, you know, particularly Bryony, the young girl played by Saoirse Ronan, you know, just having those moments of imagination with kind of like motes of dust in the atmosphere and, you know, the last, like low lights are breaking through it. Those things were kind of like, okay, we don't even need the whole crew, just take that bounce board, we'll put the camera on the legs and we'll run down into the field and shoot it through the long lens through the field. We did lots of that, and we got some of the best shots that way.
How do you prepare film to be able to see improvisation opportunities? What's your first step?
Well, the first step is to read the script.
No doubt.
Yeah, and some people don't, actually. It's amazing. Or some people read it out of order or read it specific to what they want to shoot or what's coming up first. You have to read the script and read it with the story in mind. Read it as a book. You must read it in one go so that you can see the flow of images and think what will follow another image, because you won't see that sequence of images unless you think of it as a sequence. It's just, broadly speaking, what are the thematic, photographic and cinematographic things going on here. You know, don't say, hey, let's use the red or let's use the Alexa. Forget about anything technically at the start. Just don't even think about, oh, there's going to be a macro shot there, or there's going to be, or let's use that filter. Just think about the thematic overview.
Excuse me. So I really like the fact that he emphasized or de-emphasized really the technologies at our disposal, and rather prefers an open-hearted approach where you can walk into a situation with a plan. You should always have a plan for a situation, but the idea that the plan is does not become counterintuitive to finding the best possible images that suit the story, and the fact that he stresses reading the script, front to back as a story first before you start dissecting it and looking for breakdowns and looking for, shots and stuff. Just to read the story and become emotionally engaged with the characters and to sort of feel for the emotion or the prevailing tone of the script and allow that to move you and direct your choices for the cinematography, I think is an excellent point to make. And he articulates that very well and a classic Irish brogue. So you may have picked that up from the way he speaks. He is from Ireland, and he does shoot predominantly the European market, although he does come to the States and shoot from time to time. He's one of my favorites. He really loves camera movement, but like he said, there's time and a place for that, and a time and a place for technology. And sometimes it's just, I need a camera on a tripod with a bounce board in the middle of the grassy field, and let's do it like that. So he's always in service to the story, and he's always thinking about the cinematography as a way to enhance the audience's experience of that story. So I hope you enjoyed this brief look at these 4 cinematographers. Like I said in the assignment, I'm giving you the directory, the list of names from the ASC active members roster. Pick any one of those individuals and give us a little write-up. I think, if you can answer, 3 or 4 basic questions, I think you're really gonna be at the crux of what this assignment is about. If you want to talk about the way they move the camera, you can describe their style, give examples of their work, give us a little of their personal background. Talk about how they move the camera. Talk about how they expedite their lighting. Talk about any specific or unique tricks or tools that they happen to use. Like Seamus is a really big fan of the Steadicam. He loves the long continuous shot, but he doesn't allow that to rule or dictate his style. It's just something that when he can accomplish it, he really likes incorporating those types of things. And tell us a little bit about who you looked into. Tell us what you found out, and share it. It's set up as an assignment, so it's not set up as a discussion post, but maybe if we get some really good samples, we can have a discussion post and let you guys sort of talk about it. I've given you a quick example here. If you want to check out the attachment to my posting, it says, here's an example of research done by one of my former students. He chose Robert Elswit, ASC. You may recognize that name. He shot one of the recent Mission Impossible films. He's shot things like Good Luck and Good Night, Good Night and Good Luck. He's also shot When a Stranger Calls. And I believe he shot There Will Be Blood as well. So that was Nick's choice, Robert Elswit, and he wrote, I think he put in about 4 pages. So he answered 3 questions, one about camera movement, one about lighting, and one about special tools or techniques. And then, so that was, 3 well-developed paragraphs plus an introduction, a basic bio on his choice, and then a conclusion. So we're talking about 6 well-defined paragraphs, and I think you could probably squeeze that into 2.5 pages. Use APA styles, so you're going to want to use citations. Use images as thumbnails to demonstrate your arguments, and cite the images. Where did you get them from? Who's the copyright holder? And then if you use specific information from a magazine article or a book, be sure to cite those references as well. The documents will be scanned for plagiarism, so I'm just going to warn you guys up front. In the past, I have had students who thought it was a good idea to just go to American Society of Cinematographers, access an article on a cinematographer, and then cut and paste that article into their assignment document and submit it. If you do that, that's considered academic dishonesty, and you will be given a 0 for the assignment. So I do run all written submissions through the plagiarism checker tool at Grammarly, and let's just avoid that situation altogether by if you use a quote or you find a piece of information that you feel is compelling and contributes to your point in your document, that's fine. Use it. Just give us a citation. Let us know where you found that information, so that the folks who create content like images and articles and music and things, those creators are putting their hard work and their passion into those documents, whatever they are, those artifacts, and they deserve recognition for their work. And to pass off their work as your own is really one of the things that we as academics frown upon most vigorously is the notion that we would choose not to give attribution where it is deserved. So please use the APA style. If you don't know what APA style is, you can go to things like Project APA, the website, and it will talk to you about how citations should look and what they're consisting of and so forth. I give you a little bit of that in the document that I've provided for you down here in terms of research guidelines. But that's the kind of thing that you can do. And like I said, don't go crazy. Give me a couple of pages, 2 to 3 quality sentences on each sort of topic from the instructions, and let's see what you come up with. This is a discussion post. I'm sorry. So you can go ahead and you can comment on your classmates. So everybody should comment on at least 2 of their colleagues. Okay. So don't everybody comment on the same person's submission, for instance. Try to spread it around. So if you submit something, create your post like I've done here, put your paper as a PDF or a docx document as an attachment, and then go ahead and check out 2 of your colleagues, hopefully somebody, who needs a response or hasn't gotten 2, and give them some feedback, It doesn't have to be a great deal of feedback. 2 to 3 well-constructed sentences, I think, would be fine. And we'll take a look at those assignments, next week when we have time, or we can maybe workshop them and see what you guys have come up with. Okay, so that's what I've got for you today. Thanks so much. I think I took the full time here today. I didn't really mean to, but that's what happens when I show the videos live on the lecture. Don't forget the reading assignment, Chapter 2A from Intro to Cinematography by Hosier. And don't forget, Amazon is where you're going to obtain the rental on this particular document. And then the rest of your reading assignments will be derived from the PDFs that I've included for you. So thanks so much for your attention and your time. I hope you're all enjoying Martin Luther King Day. Watch this video at your leisure, but please watch it by Friday at midnight. And then we can come into next week's class with everybody sort of on board and on the same page. Okay? So thanks so much. Have a good afternoon, and I'll talk to you next week.